Hey, I'm back, and welcome back to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. If you are trying to figure out how to market your business, your products, your services to your market, or if you are trying to figure out the changing demographics of your community, this is the episode you've got to listen to, because we learned one thing today with Mario Carrasco from Think Now. It's that multicultural marketing is marketing. And so I cannot encourage you enough. If you are a marketer, if you are a business owner, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a corporate leader, if you are a government leader, trying to understand how to present the value of your products and services to your community, which is inevitably a diversified, culturally diverse, rich community, this is the episode you've got to listen to. Mario and his team at Think Now, his agency, are literal experts in this topic, and we dive deep and we go wide. And frankly, we just still scratch the surface. We're going to have to probably have Mario back. But if you are in these spaces and you're thinking about these issues and you're needing to try and learn more about it, you want to tap into this episode and tap into the resources that we share by the end of the episode. So I hope you enjoy the show as much as we did making it for you. Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. I'm really grateful to have this conversation today with Mario Carrasco. He is a mutual friend. We have a bunch of mutual friends. This is our first time having the chance to actually meet each other in this digital format. We already have our coffee date on the dock here, talking about getting together, since we've discovered that we probably live closer to one another in LA than most of our friends do. So we're going to correct that. But this is a great chance to start. I've been curious and wanted to have Mario on the show for a while, because he's just a wealth of knowledge about this multicultural world that we live in. And that, as I always say, and I say this with enthusiasm and pride, that this is what our country is destined to become even more of, right? And so, like, if we're in just inning number one, if we were to make a baseball analogy of where we're going as far as becoming a more multicultural country, and therefore means a more multicultural entrepreneurial business economy. And so to have Mario on the show to be able to help us understand that, and to help us understand the reality of it, the data of it, the facts of it, not just the hypotheses or a lot of the nonsense that gets spewed about misunderstanding of our neighbors and our potential clients, is really powerful for all of our investors, for all of our business owners, and for our local leaders that would listen to the show. So let me tell you a little bit about Mario. Mario is the powerhouse, big brain, big talent, hardworking guy behind Think Now, which is a cutting-edge cultural insights agency based in Burbank, California. He's got over 15 years of experience in data-driven marketing and market research. His mission is to unravel the cultural tapestry that influences consumer decisions. He's not just a leader, he's a trailblazer in many ways in this regard. He has spearheaded initiatives like Think Now Connect, which he's going to tell us more about. We're going to get me on my Spanglish, but digaygane.com. Pretty close, not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad for a gringo. Reshaping which are tools that help reshape the landscape of multicultural marketing. So to the marketers in our audience, these are amazing tools that he'll tell us more about. His expertise expands beyond just this business into boardrooms, onto stages, and even through mutual friends onto mountain bikes around the LA area. He's a sought after speaker at industry events and a prolific writer as well. He shares his insights on a number of different publications. A couple of examples you might be able to find would be Forbes and places like Media Post. Mario, buddy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rob. Honored to be invited. Looking forward to the conversation. Like you said, our first time meeting digitally, so this is a cool way to meet you.
It is. Our friendship has a head start now, right? We're gonna have this underneath us as we go forward. Yeah. So I'm stoked, and I know that we got a lot of mutual friends across the Latino business community on both sides of the border, and across Los Angeles, that are going to be stoked to see this conversation when it comes online. They'll be like, I can't believe you guys had an episode together. That's great. So let's jump right into it. There's so much we want to cover. I want to be respectful of your time and our audience's time, though. First thing first, and take this any way you like to take it, so we can start to learn, right? Is what are most companies or most leaders today in the U.S. economy not understanding? What are they not getting about the Spanish-speaking kind of multicultural economy that we have here in the United States?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I would change a little bit. It's not necessarily Spanish speaking, although that's an important, large part of the Hispanic community and multicultural in general. I think I would say the thing that's missing so many companies feel like investing in multicultural marketing or multicultural initiatives. And when we say multicultural, I'm going to be using it throughout the podcast. I want to kind of define what we're talking about, right?
Please.
It's
Yes.
essentially just people that are not non-Hispanic whites. And
Yeah.
non-Hispanic white is an interesting term. The reason that we use that is that Latinos are very diverse, and there are Latinos that identify as white. There's Latinos that identify as Black, Afro Latinos. There's a large Asian Latino community. So non-Hispanic whites are, to your point, right? The future of the country, they're declining in terms of sheer numbers, right?
Yep.
We've seen the statistics. It's a little grim, but it's a reality that marketers and business have to face, that non-Hispanic whites are just not having enough kids to replace themselves, right? So more are becoming older than are younger, and what's driving growth in this country in terms of sheer numbers are multicultural, meaning Hispanic, Black, and Asian consumers.
Yeah.
So what they're missing is, well, one, that stark reality
Yeah.
that is, it's not some future date. It's
Right.
happening now. That's your consumers now. If you look at Gen Z, people have been talking about, when is the country going to be more
Right. Right. Like that pervert. What's that?
right?
Like the 2045 date,
The
right? I hear that one
2045, right?
that gets
We're
mentioned
in
a lot.
LA. That's been our reality, and we are
Right.
we are a thermometer for the rest of the country. And if you look at Gen Z, they are already the most diverse generation in history. They're already,
Okay.
depending on how you cut the numbers, they're already a majority minority.
Okay. So just from the existing births into Gen Z over the last however many years, that is 20 some odd or
Yeah.
20 is whatever. Right. That generation is the tipping point generationally where okay, it forever turns this way going forward.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
there's
Okay.
there's some, for the data nerds out there, there's the census has just updated the way that they collect race and ethnicity. So I think that's
Okay.
going to drive even this trend further, because census is now allowing you to check multiple ethnicities for the first time. It used to be you had to check one, but as you know, right, like I think Latinos, case in point, many identify as multiple. And
Right.
so that change, we already saw it in the American Community Survey, that's increasing the number of people that are identifying as diverse, because
Okay.
now they have
Sure.
the ability to answer the questions the way that they actually identify.
That's fascinating. I hadn't thought about that. I in my own family, in my own family circumstance, right? So my daughter is half and half, right? So she's
Right,
half her mom's from Mexico City, so she's half Mexican, half me, right? So
yeah,
half non-Spanish speaking Hispanic white, right?
right,
And yet yeah, as she has come into her own, she's a writer in Hollywood and in the entertainment business on the television side. As she has come into her own, she has kind of fully embraced like the allness of her being, and she is very much on many days white passing,
yeah,
right? But she is also almost every day a strong, powerful Mexican woman,
right,
right?
right. And that your daughter is reflective of where this is all going, and that maybe when she took the census, right, or she answers the surveys, some days she's like, you know what, I'm Latina, and some days it's white. And enabling people like your daughter and Gen Z, who's increasingly multiracial, choose more than one
Yeah.
is just going to make that number bigger.
Yeah, no, unquestionably. How again? You've been at this for a while, right? And you live inside the numbers as well as I'm sure the context and the story of the numbers, which is probably the more powerful part of this puzzle. But how do the companies that are like doing this well? How are the companies that are savvy to this shift and have embraced it? Like, what is it that they're doing, or how is it that they're doing what they do well today that they didn't do, or that most of their peer group companies didn't do 10, 20 years ago?
Yeah, it's a couple of things, and I always use the same example, and they should pay me at some point. They were a client, but Target does it really well. Target does it really well, and so I had Solomon Bennett on our podcast. He used to head up insights at Target. Now he's actually at Vail Resorts, which is so interesting. I need to have him back because now he's in charge of insights for Vail Resorts. And Target has done it well for several reasons. One, I think many companies make the mistake when they think about multicultural. Maybe they listen to this podcast, or they see the data. They'll do a study and one marketing campaign, maybe a couple more, and then priorities shift and they don't do something for a couple of years. Target's been consistent for over the past decade and has really grown an authenticity and consistency that you just can't buy with one or two marketing campaigns. Two, one of the things that really opened my eyes into what Target does well, and this is something that Solomon said on the podcast, is they start with their own in-house first, meaning they know that the people working in the Target stores are also the same people they're selling to in their community.
Right.
And
Of
so
course they are, right? Because they literally live
right,
in the neighborhood. They drive to
right.
work. They take the bus to work, and then they work there.
Yeah, and the biggest markets are diverse. And so they started first saying, okay, before we're try to sell to diverse consumers, we need to make sure
Ah,
that people are happy and working at Target. So they really
wow.
closely link their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts with multicultural marketing. And I think that's a great way
Huh.
to start, is
Yeah.
like you can't have a company with a disconnect that isn't reflective of the consumer that you're serving, right? So ideally,
Yeah.
if you're going out there and saying, hey, my product and service is for you, and none of the people that work at your company look like the people you're trying to sell to, it's immediately inauthentic.
Yeah. No, for
And
sure.
I don't want to say that, if your company's not there that yet, that you shouldn't start doing that. That's not what I'm saying.
No, of course.
But the reason that Target's so good is that they made sure that their house looked good and is reflective of the community they're trying to reach prior to engaging. And then third, you were in a Target last night. I think what Target does really well is that they partner with people from the community. Like they're not trying to, make Target Latino branded things and sell that in their stores. They're partnering with these Latina creators. Like if you go
Okay.
Hispanic Heritage Month, and they're partnering with Black women for their products to make sure that they're tapping into that authenticity again. And I think that's something that they do that's fantastic. So
Do they do? It's two questions, and like you said, we won't make this a Target podcast. But I'm curious: do they do what you just described? Do they do that? I mean, I'm sure there's a part of it they do it kind of globally, universally. Do they also like hyper localize? So is there a Target in my neighborhood in Hollywood versus the Target I was in last night here in South Orange County? Are they partnering with local?
that's a good question. So in terms of I know nationally, there's things that are U.S. specific, like Hispanic Heritage Month, Black History Month. It's
And then you'll see that at all the stores.
Pride
Yeah.
Month. You'll see at the stores. I'm
Okay.
not sure about the localization, but
Yeah, and again, you don't have to speak for Target.
yeah. I'm not sure about the localization, but it's definitely country specific.
Yeah. Okay. And the second question is kind of a higher level question, more for you because you've worked, right. You have these people as clients. You have these types of companies as clients. You work with the executives, like you are the thought leader that they're coming to help them find how to go forward. Does a lot of this, I'm almost saying it like it's a bad thing, but does a lot of it come down to like the company just has an individual leader or an individual or a unique leadership team that they get it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
like
I
that
think
person or those few people are just more socially attuned, and so therefore they get
yeah,
it.
yeah, and I think you get it, right. Like I think at the end of the day, business is about people,
Yeah,
right? And business is about leadership, and the companies that are doing it just have leaders or have hired people that get it.
yeah,
So I think the NFL is a great example.
hmm.
I'm actually not an NFL person.
Yeah, me either. But
I'm more of an NBA guy, but the NFL has hired the right people.
mm,
I know the person that's heading up their multicultural. I had him on the podcast. He
okay,
gets it. Their CMO is a Latina, I believe. They're working with Jay-Z in terms of,
right. I remember
um,
that story. Yeah,
and the only thing I watch is the Super Bowl, like many Americans. And
yeah,
the last Super Bowl, I believe that was in Phoenix. They did a great job. Again, following that model that I mentioned with the Target, they connected with the Phoenix community. They worked with a Latina artist to do some of the activations there. They had Deanna Flores, who was the captain of the national flag football team in Mexico, had
In
a
Mexico,
really
right?
great commercial, right? So
Yeah.
yes, at the end of the day, it comes down to to somebody in the organization, maybe not the CEO, but someone like the CMO, someone in marketing that gets it and that is attuned to the importance of that consumer.
Yeah, and the reason I kind of asked it with that little resignation in my voice is because that's great, right? And it's great that to think of organizations, and you just highlighted a couple that have great leaders or leadership teams, but then that's also kind of discouraging, right? Because then we know that we could lay out these principles that say, like, here's what they should do and here's what an organization should do. But if they have bad leadership, or literally just a bad leader, or a leader who doesn't see the future or is trying to hold on to the past, then those organizations just aren't going to come along. And then societally, we're not going to make as much progress, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and I think one thing too, and I'm stealing this again from Solomon, who was in on the podcast. He had this great saying, and I use it all the time now, is that multicultural initiatives make sense and sense, meaning,
Nice.
right, like it makes
Yeah.
sense from a progress perspective, but also whether you're holding on to the past or not, or however you feel personally, it is a business imperative.
Absolutely.
it
Yeah,
is
doing yeah, I have had my version of Solomon's statement for years. It's doing good is doing good business,
right.
right? It's the that's the imperative, and that's clearly, again, that's what it's, you live at the intersection of that. Let's talk about you. Let's help people understand you. So what's your story? How did you find your way to build Think Now? And then tell us a little bit about it. Tell us a little bit about Think Now and kind of what it does and where it helps people.
Yeah, so I mean, I think like most people in my industry, I mean, maybe most people in general, you very rarely do you find someone that's like, I want to do market research, right? So I have a literature background. I was really passionate about literature and storytellings, and specifically, you know, diverse point of views. So I have a undergraduate and graduate degree in literature. Didn't know what I was going to do with that, and so I participated in a program that actually paid for my master's and got me credentialed in exchange for teaching high school. And I didn't necessarily have a passion for teaching, or I should say I didn't have a passion for teaching, but I thought, okay, this sounds cool. Let me give it a shot. Immediately realized that teaching was not for me. Like I went
Yeah.
from I was so the program you're still going to school, graduate school and teaching full
At
time.
the oh, wow.
And so I was, 21, 22, teaching seniors in high school, and they just ate me up alive.
That's a tough
So
crowd. That's a tough crowd.
it was a tough crowd, especially when you're really passionate about something. Teaching it in high school is the worst thing you could do. They're gonna
Unless you get those AP or those IB kids, like,
right.
yeah, it's a tough crowd.
No, I didn't have AP. I didn't have IB kids. Although within that, though, one of the things that kind of led me to where I am today, that I really enjoyed, is I did teach an ESL, English as a Second Language class,
That's
and it was the
terrific.
first time I was like, oh, okay, I can use my background in a positive way, right? The fact that I'm
Sure.
bilingual and my heritage, and I felt like I connected there. And I also taught at night school. I taught at adult school, and that was really great. Like I was teaching adults there, so that was the first kind of turn in my career where I realized, okay, I can use my bilingualism and my background in a professional way. So I started searching, what can I mean, I remember literally Googling one night after a rough day of teaching, like, what can I do with an English degree, and marketing popped up.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, this is interesting. It taps into my passion for like literature, creativity, writing. I had this idea, okay, can I use my background? And I started searching for companies in the area that I can work with. I was living in Ventura County at the time, and I found this company called Hispanic Business. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're no longer around anymore. But Hispanic Business was essentially kind of like an Inc. magazine for Latino business leaders.
Okay. I think I may have seen that over the years, like years ago.
Yeah, yeah, it's not around anymore. But the founder was kind of a trailblazer in terms of Hispanic entrepreneurship. His name was Jesus Chavarria. I did some research. I saw that they had an entry level marketing position open. like the literature major I am, I researched the founder, found out that he actually was one of the first tenured Latino professors at UCSB in literature. So I applied for the job. I wrote a heartfelt note to him, reaching out to him, telling him where I'm at. Like, hey, I'm teaching. I have a background in literature. Give me a shot, and he gave me a shot.
That's terrific. Good for you.
So I started there. I immediately fell in love with business, the corporate world, and it was a really cool first corporate job to be in a Latino owned and operated company, writing about other Hispanic entrepreneurs doing amazing things. So one of their flagship products at Hispanic Business was the Hispanic 500, which was a list of the top 500 Hispanic owned businesses, and that opened me up to entrepreneurship, right? In terms of what's the possibilities there.
Sure. And suddenly you saw a lot of people like you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Who
exactly.
looked like you, sounded like you, came from same areas, different areas. Yeah.
Yeah, and
All of a sudden you're like,
I
oh
never,
wait, there's a path out here.
yeah, and I never, I'm not one of those entrepreneurs that I was like knew from a young age that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It wasn't necessarily something I thought was possible for me, and that opened it up, and I realized, oh, working in the corporate world, like I like it. I am ambitious. I'm competitive, and so that set me on my path. And unfortunately, that company I joined when they were trying to make the transition from from a paper to a digital
To digital.
publication.
Yeah. Tough transition for lots of people.
It was a tough transition, but they didn't make it. But I learned a lot about digital and marketing, and I got exposed to research and analytics in there, and also really grew my professional network because of all the advertisers there. So ended up jumping around, and I worked at MSN Latino. After that, had a terrible commute, so started looking for things closer to the valley where I live, and found a company called Garcia Research. They were a Latino owned and operated market research firm focused only on Latinos, and they were hiring someone to build out their online division. And so
Okay.
right there, I at that point I didn't really know much about formal market research, but I thought, okay, I've been working in marketing. I can build out, an online division here. And what the job was, in essence, was building a panel. I didn't know what that was at the time, but again, I used my research skills. I put together a 30-day plan, and I got the job. And a panel, what it is essentially a group of people that agreed to take surveys on a regular basis. So you
Okay.
probably surf the net, and it's like take surveys for money.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You see those, right?
That's what I did at Garcia Research. I didn't know at the time, but when I was hired, we essentially ended up building one of the first representative Latino research panels for that company. And that company had been around for about 15 years prior to me joining. Within 2 years, the product I built ended up being the number one revenue generator for the company. And so,
Wow. Pretty good for that literature guy.
yeah, not bad, not bad. And it was again a great experience. I a Latino owned and operated company, just a great group of people. I thought I was going to work there for the rest of my career. Like I was super happy. My boss was super supportive. He's my business partner now.
That's
I, I,
great.
I,
That's an
I
amazing story.
yeah, I became VP there. But that 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 product I built, attracted other companies that wanted to purchase that asset, and so
Okay.
a larger market research company came in and purchased that company in 2011. And my boss at the time and I were like, do we go along, become executives for this market research company, or do we start our own thing? Because we thought, this was 2011. We thought there was still an opportunity for a company to exist 100% focused on multicultural consumers. And so we ended up not going along during that ride, and we started Think Now in 2011. So flash forward, it's 13 years, which is insane. Um, you know,
And there's still an opportunity for a firm to be focused on this, right?
yeah, there's still an opportunity
Back
there.
then you were a little bit earlier to the party than you thought you were at that time,
Yeah,
even.
yeah, exactly. And so it's been an amazing ride. We have over 50 employees across 5 countries now. So, and my day to day now, I mean, obviously it's evolved throughout those 13 years. When it was my business partner and I, we were doing everything.
Sure.
But now I head up. Now I'm mainly focused. We have a panel. We built our own panel here, so we now we're in the U.S. and Latin America, and then I head up our product team, which is we're really focused on using technology to help companies understand diverse consumers. I think that's one thing that sets us apart. I mean, back when I started, there was this idea that you can't reach recently immigrated Latinos using technology, and actually the opposite is true.
I was going to say, yeah, I was like, boy, if you could plug into WhatsApp, you can get them more easily than you can get the guy living down the street with a landline.
Exactly, and so that's the thesis of the company, and it's been an amazing ride. I
That's
love what I
terrific.
do. I get to combine my background, my passion for Latino culture, and the
Well,
story behind the
and
data.
I was going to say, you're accumulating data and like
Yeah,
little, it sounds like millions of data points to represent consumer behaviors, but then you're helping clients to shape that into a story, into a narrative,
right,
right?
right.
So,
Like, and recently, like, so we do a lot of thought leadership, a lot of research out of our own pocket of things that we're just interested in. And so, like, most recently, I've been really into this new wave of corridos that are getting popular, like Peso Pluma and Javi. And so I thought,
yeah,
like, is it just me? Is it hype? And so I was like, oh well, let's do some research. And so we
right.
we we partnered with an ad agency, OTC, and launched this whole corridos research. And now we're presenting it, and it's fun.
That's incredible. Quick profile. What are you don't have to name any, of course, but what are the types of clients that work with you guys?
Yeah, so we work with a huge range of clients, which is again makes it interesting, right? So we have like Meta, we Google, but also AARP, Honda.
Okay.
So it's a gamut. And then we do government research as well. So we're working with the FDA, the CDC, LA Metro, yeah,
That's
all
fantastic.
across the board.
Is this just as a consumer and an entrepreneur and as someone who's a passionate believer in, as we've already both said, kind of this is the future of our country, so like let's be great at it, right? Is the vibe, I mean, I would imagine the clients that are with you are trying to figure it out. So I was going to say, kind of, is the vibe like that they're really earnestly trying to figure it out, right? That they've really embraced that this is what the next iteration, the next 100 years, as I like to say, of our country looks like, or do you get some clients that are just kind of like doing it short termer, right? They're just doing it to kind of like,
Yeah.
as you say, hit on a campaign or trying to make some money off of this market or something like that.
I mean, I think we're lucky. The majority of our clients are companies that get it, because research isn't cheap.
Right.
And you have to be at a certain size in order to invest in research regularly. So I would say 80% of our clients are clients that get it, that are dedicated, that do it regularly. 20% are not necessarily doing one-offs, like I would say are earnestly trying to understand and kind of early in their journey. And because it can be daunting, right? It can be daunting to for a company that's been around. If they're coming to us, they've had the realization, oh damn, we're not doing enough, and so we try to help them, to guide them, and we love working with our clients that are invested in it regularly. But honestly, I think my favorite is working with that first time client to show them an
Yeah.
opportunity, because as an entrepreneur, like, there's no better conversation than saying, hey, look at all this opportunity there is that you
Right.
have, and we get to deliver that to them. So that's satisfying.
No, it's got to be gratifying in it also just in a deeply personal way, right? To kind of go
Right.
like, hey, look, this has always been here,
Yeah.
right? And now
Yeah.
there's more of this than ever. And if you would just lean into this,
Yeah.
like it's going to be great business for you, but you're also going to engender like so much goodwill in your communities and frankly just help contribute to a better overall society. That's
Exactly.
awesome. That's incredible. All right, so we've talked about it a few times. You're based here in LA. It's a very proud LA person here, as we love to say online on Twitter, right? We're hashtag long LA. We're
Yeah.
long believers in the potential here. I always talk about the next 50 to 100 years of what the city will become and has the potential to be. And people tease me and they're like, Rob, you're not even going to be alive for like most of that period that you just described. I'm like, but that's the point, right? Is the legacy of what's coming. So tell me, how has doing what you do, so specifically what you do, how has doing that here in Los Angeles affected your business or shaped kind of how you view things? Because it almost seems like it would be like a petri dish of some sort, right? A
Yeah.
sandbox. Is that true, or is that just my perception that it would be a great sandbox to prove
Yeah.
out
So
some of these theses?
it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword in that how do I phrase it? Like, I like you. I love Los Angeles, and I'm actually a big proponent also specifically of the San Fernando Valley. I mean, I love the San Fernando Valley. It's its own
Oh, wait, let's be
thing.
honest. Anywhere else in the country, it would be its own major city.
Yeah, it's its own thing. I mean, I love the diversity. I love it, it's amazing, but I think we forget. So, how does it affect me and my business is that you forget that most of the country doesn't have
Mm.
access to something like this. And you're
So
talking,
we could get into our own head and
yeah,
forget that like the rest of the country is not Los
right.
Angeles.
Yeah, and I mean, we just had this conversation. I won't name the client, but it's a big brand. It's a
Sure.
big
Yeah.
brand that they wanted us to come out to their headquarters and present on the Latino market. And I think my business partner and I, we talk about this stuff daily, like, and I think we can get really into the weeds in terms of the types of research that we want to do. But this client was like literally looking for how many Latinos live in the U.S. What is a Latino?
Oh,
Like, right?
okay.
And this is last week. And so when you have conversations like that, I think living in Los Angeles, you realize we're super skewed.
Very.
We're
Yes.
super skewed, and when you look at the
I mean,
Midwest and the South,
that's 101 level stuff right there, right?
it
That's
is,
like,
it is,
okay, we're going to start at the baseline. This is like day one.
yeah, and this brand and the category they're in, it's so diverse. I
Interesting.
think I think I can mention.
It's you don't have, I don't want to put you in a
No, I
pinch,
don't want
but
to
I
mention.
mean,
I don't want to mention the brand, but
yeah, yeah,
but I'm trying to think. Can I mention the space they're in? Alcoholic beverages. Let's say that.
sure,
And
okay,
I wanted to mention that because that's a space that's already so far ahead in terms of multicultural, right?
right,
I mean, tequila overtook, I don't know if you know this, whiskey for the first time ever, like in the past 50 years since we've been tracking that, right? Like
indeed,
tequila is the number one spirit now. I mean, and that's the Latinofication of the US, right?
yeah,
And so, yeah, Los Angeles is great in terms of it being a petri dish, like you mentioned, and a place for us to know where this is all headed. But it's a double-edged sword in that you have clients
yeah,
again that are not in this place that
right.
we are, and you have to check yourself and realize, okay, much of the country is not like in this space that we are, and we have to.
The good, I guess the good news of that double edge, that part of the sword, right, is that hey, they called you. Like they need
Right,
they at least know, as you said in the very beginning. Oftentimes, your clients have hit that aha moment or oh shit moment internally,
right,
right, in their own company structure, and then gone, oh wow, okay, wait a minute, we don't know. And
right.
so in this context, kudos to them for recognizing that and reaching out and finding you. And but the truth is, as you say, either their geography or maybe their historic consumer base, hasn't been what we have here on a daily basis and have had here for literally since the existence
Well,
of the
and
state.
I will say with this, like after presenting and seeing the people who were there, it goes back to your question about the leadership.
Yeah, of course. No, and again,
Yeah.
double-edged sword, right? Like that means there's ample opportunity for people
Right.
to learn the future, but it's going to take really savvy, empathetic people like you as entrepreneurs and your partner to help them kind of help shepherd them towards the future because they might not have found it on their own.
Exactly. Exactly.
And therefore, then that's how companies do. I was having a debate with a friend last night about two different sporting leagues, and I won't name them, but let's just say like why this one is seemingly missing out on the capture opportunities and why this one seems to be capitalizing on them in advance. And I had an inside story from another mutual friend, and I said honestly, sometimes it just comes down to the fact that like the commissioner of this league is just not as good, not as savvy a business person, not as thoughtful and timely a marketer as the commissioner of this league is.
Yeah.
I was like, so, like we come up with all these like that these national corporations must be so sophisticated, and the reasons that they fail at things must be so multi-layered and involve so many variables. And the truth is, sometimes it's just they have a shitty CEO
It's people.
who,
It's
who just
people at the
doesn't,
end of
yeah,
the
who
day.
just doesn't get it, right?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. All right, so real quick, I want you to touch on. So we talked in your bio. I described kind of two different parts of your business, and I would love you to describe what they are so people can get a sense of it. So one thing we talk about is and your love and belief in technology as a tool to help understand the multicultural marketing opportunity is think now, connect, CONNEKT,
Yeah.
trademark, and then my famously Spangishly butchered phrase, Digai Gane.
Yeah.
Right. So talk to us about those two: a market segmentation tool, and then your platform
Yeah.
for market research.
Yeah. I kind of how we view Think Now. We are a full service market research company that utilizes technology to reach diverse consumers. And so everything we do and build is throughout that lens. And so full service is the work I mentioned to you, the Meta AARP, where we sit down with the client, they have an objective, and from that objective, we create a questionnaire that meets that objective. We get the people to answer the survey. We analyze the data and present a report. So that's full service. We have a whole other department is called Sample, which is the Digaigane panel,
Okay.
roughly translated to say and win. And that panel is our platform that we invite consumers to join, and they share their opinions with us on a regular basis, and we pay them an incentive. And so the clients there are other market research companies that don't have that asset. So the Nielsen's, Ipsos, GfK's of the world, large, multinational market research corporations that they're out there doing research, but they don't have the diverse consumers to answer those surveys, and they tap into our panel. We have our government division that does the same thing that full service does for private clients, for the government and public sectors.
Okay.
Think Now Connect is our SaaS platform. Like I mentioned to you, we did that corridos research, but we've done hundreds of studies on our own dime over the past decade plus. And so we took all that data, put it into a SaaS platform for marketers to be able to search and create personas based on that data. And then our newest product is called Think Now Audiences. So we realized that in the digital media space, there was an opportunity for us to take that same data that we've been collecting for this past decade and make it available for digital advertisers to advertise to culturally specific segments. So Latino, Black, Asian consumers. We have LGBTQ targeting capabilities.
Amazing.
So you can go into all of the major programmatic platforms like the Trade Desk and Google DV360 and Xandr. And if you search Think Now, you'll see we have over 500 audiences that we've created. And so that to me is the most exciting part. Like we're able to now extend our data into industries that could really use data that wouldn't necessarily be exposed to our company.
That's fascinating. I love that. I want to kind of remind everybody, and you included, right? So the thesis that underlies this show, it was a different version of itself for 3.5 years, and then I kind of recast it this year because I hit a point in my own life and in my own business life where I thought, I want to talk to a broader range of people. And my thesis is entrepreneurial thinkers, right? And who are entrepreneurial thinkers? Entrepreneurial thinkers are everybody across every sector and segment of society or industry, right? That are thinking creatively or innovatively or freshly about how to either attack the problems that we all face or how to seize the opportunities that are in front of us. And to me, you are that. Like you are an entrepreneurial thinker before you an entrepreneur, frankly. Right? That's how you navigated your way through your early professional life. You're creative at your core. So you use your leadership energy in things beyond Think Now, right? You're involved in other organizations. I saw in your history, you're involved in an industry conference organization, SampleCon. You're involved in an organization called Insights in Color. Talk to me about how these outside projects, like outside your day-to-day work at Think Now, talk to me about how those complement your work or just feed you as a person, as a leader. And then what do you hope to achieve through some of this kind of extra adjacent work that you do in the community?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think what's great about entrepreneurship is, well, I should say one of my favorite parts is just actualizing my full potential, right? And tapping into things and confidence that I never thought I would have, right? And entrepreneurship, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's one of the most difficult things, or the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, but it's also one of the most satisfying. But I think I'm lucky in that I've had this mission early on in my career to utilize my background and my heritage to affect business change, and that's been the thesis of the company that my business partner and I share. And so these other roles that I have in the industry is just extending that. I think one thing that's unfortunate about multicultural marketing is that you tend to be siloed. Like it's
Mm.
a thing. You're a multicultural marketer, not a marketer. You're a diverse entrepreneur, not an entrepreneur. And
Interesting.
so these other,
By the way, I never would have thought that.
yeah,
I
happens.
wouldn't have thought, but that's me. That's my own bias,
Yeah,
like in the for the positive, hopefully. But interesting.
yeah. And so I think these positions allow me to show up as an entrepreneur, as a thought leader, irrespective of the focus of my business or my personal passion. And that's
That's
what I hope
great.
to achieve. So SampleCon is an industry event once a year, the only event focused specifically on the sample industry, what we do in Digagane, so procuring respondents for the
Okay.
industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so it's great. You know, I joined the board, I think 3 4 years ago, and I'm the chairman of the board now. And I've been able to put my stamp and my personal, I guess,
Your
passion.
personality, yeah,
Yeah.
like you're yeah.
And so, you know, that's how I see it, is like another other growth opportunities personally and professionally.
That's terrific. And I early in my career, I like first 10 years of my career, like all of us, I was hyper focused on just my career, right, and what I needed to do. And in my case, like you, I think the other side of the coin is, what do political scientists that graduate from college do if they don't become lawyers or politicians, right? That we wind up in marketing or sales,
Yeah.
right? So you literature and political science people are the same,
Yeah.
right? But then at kind of my late 20s, early 30s, as I ventured into the entrepreneurial world, I became it was intentional. Like it seems like you, right? It was
Yeah.
like, okay, I have this capacity to do this, but then I also want to take some of what I know here and what I've learned here, and I want to apply it out here in kind of the adjacent community. I'm just old enough to literally be old school enough, that Dad taught me that part of our mission as a business person in your community is to leave the community a little bit better than you found it.
Exactly.
Right, which is also, I think, maybe some of your passion for the valley, our shared passion for the broader mosaic of Los Angeles is, right, we're trying to do the things you do or the things I do to try and leave this place that is home, that is our place, a little bit better than we found it. But talk to
100%.
me if you can. You hit it, and it's the number I've heard from all kinds of friends on all industry ends, both in Latin America and here in the US, this 2045 number, right? And it's funny. So my last question I want to ask before we get to the closing segment was just kind of a, be the soothsayer, be the visionary forecaster for us a little bit. And look out. And I was about to say, look out over the next 20 years. Then I did the math. I was like, oh, that's 2045.
Yeah.
Right. But look out over that 20-year vision or 20-year span. And how does this world that you play in, how does multicultural marketing, maybe I'll put it to you the way you just said it, how does it just become marketing?
Yeah. Yeah. How does
by
it?
these big companies and these big brands? Is 20 years from now, is it just marketing?
Yeah. I mean, I think the industry that I'm in, right, the subsegment of marketing called multicultural marketing would love for it to be just marketing. My personal opinion is that I don't think it's going to be that, you
Yeah,
know,
neither do
I
I.
don't think
I'm
it's
with
going to
you.
be that.
Yeah. Not by that. The population will be, but
Yeah.
the marketing won't be. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think that the companies that are doing it now are going to be in a great position to be thought leadership. I think they're going to continue to grow. I think there's going to be, you're already seeing it now. There's a lot of acquisitions of these type of companies, right? So I think there'll be a lot of consolidation and continue to be a lot of consolidation in our space. And I'm optimistic that these consolidations, I mean, what happened with Garcia Research, right? And now they're part of a large organization, that these organizations, as they start to acquire more companies with multicultural expertise and that is their thesis, that it does become more marketing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the landscape's going to change. I mean, from a business perspective, I think we're going to see more and more inclusivity, I think we're experiencing kind of a backlash right now. There's a little bit of a D&I backlash. I was concerned at first, but we actually did a study because we were
Mm,
like, is this backlash actually affecting marketing budgets? We wanted to.
yeah.
And so we went out and we asked over 100 marketers. We did a B2B survey within these large organizations. If specifically, is this backlash affecting you? And we got at that by seeing, do they plan to increase spend this year or decrease spend? The majority of them are increasing or staying the same.
That's
So
good
I think
news.
what's happening is the backlash is affecting. There was a point, in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd, all the companies went public with supporting multicultural and D&I initiatives. I think that's still happening. I just think they're now not publicizing it,
Okay.
right? Like,
That is real. That is good news.
that is good
And
news,
and
right?
by the way, I love that you're punctuating this with like facts,
Yeah,
right? And not just like hyperbolic speculation
right.
anymore.
Well, because like as a business owner, I was like, oh man, like what's gonna happen to that business if
Right.
this stuff happening? And so what's happening is, again, full circle. Like, the numbers are there.
Yeah.
Whether there's a backlash or not, companies have to invest in it. So what are they doing? They're
Yeah.
investing in it. They're just not promoting that they're doing it.
Sense, and sense, as
Right.
your friend, as your guy Solomon would tell us, right?
Right.
That's awesome. All right. So last segment of the show. I love to try and leave our listeners with something actionable. And by the way, I think we've left them with a bunch of actionable things today. And a couple of the actionable things we'll get to at the very end, which is I want to make sure that, and we'll put everything that you mentioned into the show notes, but at the very, very end, we're going to make sure we go back and like how people can find your podcast. Because I don't care who you're marketing to or where you fall in the marketing hierarchy of your company or how big or mid-sized your company is. Like, you clearly need to be listening to Mario's podcast to be learning from him, as well as to be learning from the industry leaders that he brings on that are your peers. So we're going to get the podcast mentioned. We're going to tell people how they can find and follow you, how they can find and engage with Think Now, because clearly people, and you have clients all over the place, and you have different types of clients all over the spectrum of industry and public sector. So, for all the listeners and people that are involved in the entrepreneurial economies of, as I call it, the Americas, the old original Western Hemisphere, right, is no matter which sides of the borders you're on, you can reach out, and I'm sure there are resources and value that Think Now can provide. So please take advantage of this opportunity and Mario's expertise. But before we get to that, let's give a couple of kind of like tips and strategies on different things. So one of the questions I had here, what would be 3 top strategies or tactics that you have found to be most effective in bridging cultural gaps, right? So this is the idea of kind of understanding and ultimately connecting a company's products or services with diverse customer segments. So if it's this is maybe the answer to the corporate marketers out there, who are some of your clients or prospective clients. Like, what are 3 top strategies or tactics that they should be focusing on to bridge these cultural gaps in understanding?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, and I think this goes for corporate marketers. I think, given the audience of your podcast, entrepreneurs as well, is coming in from the get go that your consumer is diverse. Just having that knowledge and making sure, whether you come from a diverse background or not, making sure that you're thinking about that. I think you're ahead of the game. So whether you're a marketer or an entrepreneur, understanding the product and service that's going to exist if I'm launching in the US and frankly globally, right? We haven't really even talked about that, but it's diverse, right? Most of your consumers in the
Absolutely.
US and globally are diverse. And so if you start, whether that's a marketing campaign or a company or a product, with that thesis in mind, you're going to be ahead of the game. 2, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you want to reach these consumers and you don't have that background or knowledge, there's so many people in the community already doing that work that would love to partner with you.
That's
Like,
great.
you don't have to try, we've seen, like, I mean, I'm just thinking of the one in Los Angeles that was a huge fail, like the bodega startup, right?
Yeah, I remember that. I can't remember the name either, but I remember the story, right?
I think the name was bodega.
I think you're right, actually. Yeah.
um, that
But it was in like it was in a very like Erewhon font, right?
right,
It was very,
right.
yeah.
It was just a complete fail, and I think they could have it could have, I think the idea was great.
I did too. Yeah.
But they could have connected with the community in Los Angeles. Like you can't come into the community and tell Latinos or Black consumers, Asian consumers about something they're already familiar with. I think they missed an opportunity to connect with someone already in the community.
Yeah.
And doing that, you're authentic, and then you have a built-in consumer base there. And then three, I would say, start now, and that's the company. Think now. It's not something in the future. It's not 2045. Your consumers are diverse now. The sooner that you can start acting or thinking upon reaching diverse consumers, the better off your business is going to be in the long run.
That's powerful. And I love that that is very intentionally, obviously, in your branding, because it's true. It's not about, because in 2045, who knows, it might wind up being 2043, or it might be 2049, or like, it doesn't matter.
Well, here's a stat that we didn't talk about in preparation for that presentation that my business partner and I did recently for a company. We were digging through census data and realized 15% of the population are immigrants in the US. That's actually the biggest it's ever been since like
15.
15.
Okay.
That's the
largest it's ever been in the history of 245 years.
Yeah, more than, that time, Ellis Island and all the immigrants.
Right.
Like that's crazy to think about, right? Like we have this resurgence of immigration and there's the whole political aspect of it, but like I think we are so lucky as a country to have immigrants, right? Because
100%.
So many countries, I mean, let's talk about Japan, right? Like an aging population that they're dealing with. People aren't having kids anymore. We're so lucky to have immigrants who are entrepreneurial.
I mean, and again, you're going to laugh because you'll love this in a couple of weeks when this show comes out, because it's going to come out in sequence with an episode that I happened to record yesterday, and unintentionally the last like 4 minutes of yesterday's show with a really bright young guy that you should know also winds up exactly at this topic, which is fascinating. Right. It's the we don't need to separate politics from it, because it is the politics of the country. This is the root of the country. This is who we are. Literally, like I'm just a fourth generation American, right? Like the 4 generations ago, my family's people were in Ireland farming potatoes, right? So like the whole country, except for some tiny little sector of nativists, the whole country is built on this. And frankly, we'll have to give Solomon a special credit in the show for reusing his sense and sense, right? But like at a political level, at a macro policy level, over the next 50 years, not just in the moment of today or last 4 years or next 4 years, right? It's inevitable that immigration policy has to be made smoother, simpler, better, more efficient, because it's sense and sense.
Yeah.
If I read a statistic a couple of weeks ago that if, for example, in the immigration policy side of things, that if people were to figure out, if the political ruling class was able to figure out how to streamline the existing 11 or 10 or 11 million undocumented folks that are in the US, the economic bump in the GDP was like 2%.
Right.
It was some insane. It was like we're at like 3%, and it would be another 2% on top of that. I mean, it's just insane amounts of economic activity that just inevitably throughout history, not just in our country, but in every country, when you look, immigration is inextricably linked to economic growth and development. And so, it's just, and that's why, again, it's one of the reasons, as friends through mutuals and all that stuff, like I've been so fascinated from afar just by what I see you publish and what I see you write about or posts that I see. And then just knowing from some mutual friends like our buddy Diego, your mountain biking friend, both here in LA and in Jalisco, right? Like that, like knowing that you were out there, I'm like, someday I've got to have this conversation with Mario, not just for the show, but just for us as friends and collaborators here in town, because what you're working on is, some people would say it's the vanguard. You 13 years ago would have said, hey, I think there's still space for like an innovative. It's like, dude, you were so like the doors hadn't even opened yet when you showed up. There's still space for more of you now. Because where we're headed is inevitable. There is no debate around this. Like the country will look and speak and smell from its foods and its cultures and its fragrances. Like, it'll just be different in 2050 and in 2100 and in 2125 than it was in 1980 or 1776 or any point before it. And that's a good thing.
Exactly.
And you and Think Now is really well positioned to do it. So I'm great. Hey, I'm grateful, man. I mean, you and I literally, you've said it a couple times in the last couple minutes, and it's 100% true. We could do an entirely separate hour. And I just won't do that to you today because no one would listen to our 2-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Right. But we could do an entirely separate hour. And I would love to have you back at some point when it fits for you to talk about Latin America as a whole. Right. Sure. Because you do have operations outside the US. And I know you have an affinity and a thoughtfulness about the broader kind of what I call the Americas.
Yeah, we just officially incorporated a sister company in Mexico, Think Now MX. So that's another thing I've been focused on. I got my Mexican citizenship through my dad. So
felicidades, that is awesome.
Yeah, gracias.
And there's so much, again, politics of actual border walls aside. Like, there's so much that will naturally happen between those two countries and Mexico as the gateway from Latin America over the next 100 years that is gonna become just about economic and cultural bridges and no borders. And so for you to be positioning the company as well as just yourself, your family, it's incredible. It is what our future is. So, dude, this has been a pleasure. Thank you. It's been a blast. As you said, we could have gone on forever. Which is a compliment to you having so much to talk about, and maybe just two old liberal arts students getting together and chatting about their passions. But before we go, let's make sure that we tell people a couple things, please, in this order. Like, let's talk about how do we find the podcast? What's it called? How do we connect with you or find you at Think Now? And then if somebody really wants to see your mountain biking photos from last weekend, how do they find you on social media?
Yeah, so podcast is the new mainstream podcast. We're on everywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, etc. Website is thinknow.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I think that's where I'm most active. Mario X Carrasco on LinkedIn. Twitter, Mario X Carrasco. And then Instagram, MX Carrasco. So feel free to reach out any of those. And then my email, mario@thinknow.com.
That's terrific. Thanks, brother. This is great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure, Rob.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. You know, we can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, like, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms, as well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.